Welcome to another episode of Smash or Pass with JayBee,
Hola!
me Milly, and of course Smash.
Hola!
Hey!
So as you can probably tell, this week's episode is Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico. So looking forward to this one. I mean, viewpoints going into this is where we're getting to the stage where I've only seen these movies maybe once or twice. I think the last time I saw this, I was maybe 7 or 8.
Oh.
So that's like
Wow.
13 years ago. And I think even then I only saw it once or twice. Smash, going into this, I'm presuming that you've probably seen this movie a few times.
Yes, I have seen this one quite a handful of times.
And JayBee?
I'm kind of ashamed to say this, but I think in terms of animated Scooby Doo movie, this may be the one that I've seen the most, and I can't really explain that. I think it was one of the first that I had on DVD. It was like my go-to holiday movie, you know, on the plane, when I was at work with my mum. Like, this was... I don't know why, but I must have seen this at least 1,000 times, and in hindsight, I don't know how to feel about that.
So I think we'll have a look and see if that movie impacts our opinions or anything at all. But for those of you that haven't seen this one for a while, little brief plot synopsis. So all of Miss Drink are invited to Mexico to spend time with a family over there. And just before they arrive, we see El Chupacabra arrive just in like pre-celebrations of, is it Day of the Dead?
Yeah, the Day of the Dead festivities.
And so of course, as always, Miss Drink want to work out who's behind it, if the family's involved, and we certainly meet a few interesting characters along the way as well. I think it's fair to say that we're gonna come on to. So looking at this straight from the opening, I got really good vibes at the start. I really like the family feel of the festivities and stuff. I know JayBee was like, oh, what type of festivals do we have like this that I can celebrate? Because it was quite a nice feel at the opening, I think.
I like it a lot. The only thing that confused me was there seemed to be a crowd gathered around the dad and the son just playing a xylophone. I don't know how realistic that would be, but I do really enjoy how it just, I don't know, I'll just always associate the opening song and the opening scene with about, you know, just about going on holiday or being on road trips. So I like this in terms of the intro, especially the juxtaposition of happy music, people partying, to that kind of more creepy vibe of the El Chupacabra. I don't know what the heck I did there. El Chupacabra.
There'll be a prize for the best pronunciation of that by the end of this, and so far you're winning.
But I'm curious to know what Smash thinks of this, because I'm not too familiar with Smash's opinion on this movie going into the podcast, but I know that this is definitely an interesting one. So, on intro alone, Smash, what was your opinion on this?
So, I have to first say that no matter if the Scooby movie is good or bad, I feel like they just really know how to do, like, the background music of these movies, or just music in general, because talking about it with you guys, I'm like, there are way more Scooby movies that just have like really good music in them, whether they're sung or it's just playing in the background. Like, they really know how to kind of set the mood with the music. And like you guys were saying, like, yeah, it starts out really fun. We kind of see everyone just in this kind of downtown communal area. And then, you know, as this kid wanders off to find his dog and whatever, it gets more creepy. And then, you know, you hear the music of the party fade, and all of a sudden it gets eerie as you see the Chupacabra. And I have to say the opening is really, really fun. I really like that they kind of did a King Kong homage with him. But overall, it's a fun opening. I wouldn't say it's my favorite by any means, but it definitely like sets the mood for the monster.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, a couple of things that you said there that I really picked up on and agreed with is you were saying about the music. Now, as soon as we get the opening scene finished and the Scooby Doo title comes up on the screen, you just start to hear these maracas playing, and it just brings a really nice vibe with it that I think sets you up quite positively for the movie. And as well, as we were saying with this type of opening, we get to meet the El Chupacabra before Mystery Inc. do. And one thing that I kind of picked up on that is they do similar to they did in Alien Invaders, in that you don't see it initially, you see a silhouette initially.
Yeah.
And that's how they introduced the aliens in that movie as well. And I personally think that it worked really well for the aliens, because I found them more intimidating as the silhouettes than when you added in all the green and stuff. But for this one, I found the shape quite strange just with the green eyes. But then when the silhouette cleared and you saw like the actual kind of monster, I found that quite a step up. So I think it was done quite nicely here.
Yeah.
I
mean, just to kind of get the elephant in the room out of the way, is anyone familiar with what El Chupacabra is actually supposed to look like?
Isn't it?
It's like
I do
a dog.
But is okay, yeah. It's like a four-legged animal, yeah.
So they've taken a few liberties here, which isn't a problem for me personally up until a bit later when Velma outright calls El Chupacabra Mexico's Bigfoot. Like, that's kind of an awkward oversimplification. But in like first initial things alone, like, it's fine for what it is at this point. But my question is, and it kind of threw me off a bit, especially just looking back at it, if someone is at this festival and he runs out screaming El Chupacabra, is it people's initial response to scream and run? Like, do they... I don't know if this is just, you know, a stereotype, or if people would actually genuinely believe it. Like, just thinking about... I don't know if there's any English folklore, but let's say, okay...
The Loch Ness.
Dracula's around here somewhere, supposedly. If we ran into town going, oh my gosh, guys, Dracula, run, run, run... I think we'd be sworn at or something. Like,
if it was my hometown, they'd be putting the cameras up, because that's like one of the places where it was written.
Yeah.
So just like, oh great, get the cameras out.
So, no idea how
my other thing too with it is, I believe the original like lore of the Chupacabra is that it eats goats, and so I'm like, I don't think it'd be at this party, but okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be around here picking on humans, is it?
It's after the dog. It's like Scooby's rival.
Yeah, true. It is after the dog.
See, I'm going to say, I know JB's kind of touched on one issue there, but because I guess I didn't know that much about El Chupacabra and I was quite young when I first saw this, it was something I didn't really notice and consider. My first issue with this movie arises after the titles, and we see the characters all being almost reintroduced. They all seem to almost have an introduction with some overemphasized personality characteristics and that kind of thing. I guess I'll touch on that a little bit more afterwards, but I wanted to get both of your opinions on that first. So maybe smASH, how did you feel about that? It's kind of like half email communication but performed like a video call. How do you feel about it?
Okay, so I want to backtrack just a little before that, because I just had a little side note.
I'm sorry.
I really like how they do the opening credits with the eyes kind of flowing around, and that's all we see. But I hate the font that they use in this movie. It's such a cheap font. Like, anybody could type it up. It's like I can't remember it's like sans something. Anyway, it is one that you maybe, but anyway, that's just a random little note. It's like, I love it, but I hate it at the same time. Anyway, with your question though, I always felt so confused with this part, because I was like, are they emailing? Are they video chatting? I mean, I get the idea they were trying to go with, and you know, I guess it gets the job done, but I just don't know, like, would you really like be talking? I don't know. It confuses me. It still does, but I get what they were trying to do. It's fun, but I feel like it needed just a little tweaking.
Yeah. JB, I know you said you had a previous point and then you were going to address that
I was
as well.
pretty much just going to reiterate what smASH said about the intro. I've always loved that. I didn't know if that was a popular opinion or an unpopular opinion, but I think that's one of like the coolest songs that they've used, and the eyes is amazing. I didn't really notice the text though, I've got to say, and I don't really remember it off the top of my head, but the intro, I don't know if it's just me being influenced by, I guess, this has been a big pandemic year that where we've all been doing stuff online a bit more, and I did use Skype early, maybe 2000s-ish, no clue. So I don't know if that was a thing, like if as a kid I was sat there watching, oh, I guess they're just using Skype, or if I'd had something else in my mind. But it just seemed a bit much. Like Daphne's watching some dodgy website. Like,
she's just drooling. I feel
what
like
even is that?
it's quite. I think it's quite damaging to some of the characterizations about
Ricky with his
You'd
hips.
almost think this was the first ever Scooby Doo movie, that we'd never met these characters, and so they're over exaggerating who these characters are. So you've got Fred at the start making the plan. Someone's reaching out to him like, let's do this, and he's kind of like, yep, you know what, we'll all be there. Then Daphne is kind of being portrayed as a very basic kind of drilling over boys type thing, which I think at this point they'd worked quite hard to avoid. So the live action movies had both come out at this point, hadn't they?
I think this was
The first
2003,
one.
so
The first one
it's
had.
the year after, or maybe 2004. I think 2004.
So this came out in 2003,
Ah.
and the second live action movie came out the year after.
2004, yeah.
But I think one of the main points in the first live action movie, especially if you consider the deleted scenes, is they wanted to work so much away from Daphne just being the damsel in distress. Like, it starts off with that with the Lunar Ghost, then it's like, oh, she's going to go to camp, she's going to learn all this like taekwondo, karate kind of thing, and then implement it throughout the movie. So I feel like, Scooby Doo has kind of taken a direction where it didn't want her to just be there to be rescued. And then I think just the start of this movie kind of set up that she didn't have very much going on other than being a bit basic.
But it serves no purpose. That's the thing. Like, they could have used it as like, say Mr. Smiley is just some big hunk, and she's on like Mr. Smiley's website or something. Like, just something like that would be something that would set it up. But it serves no purpose. And I was almost thinking, and I'm skipping way ahead, but obviously we'll backtrack. When Daphne is like in bed listening to music, I was almost like, oh, so that's where that factors in. She was kind of like admiring someone from a boy band, and so that's what she's listening to, and she's going to mention that. But no, it's just this funky Ricky guy swinging his hips about.
See, I even think... Sorry, after you.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, I also it kind of bugs me with that scene because she's just like staring at this moving hips all around guy, and then the email from Fred pops up and she's like, oh yeah, Fred, like it just kind of felt almost rude, like, oh, like, when you're not thinking of Fred, you're looking for someone else to drool over. I don't know, it felt a little offending to me.
And then I'm pretty sure, like JayBee said, like moving way forward in the movie, but at some point she says the words, it's hard to come by like a good boyfriend or something like that. And it's like, don't try and allude to her liking Fred now after you've done this. Come on.
Or maybe that's who she's talking about. Like, I just wish we knew more about this. Like, I'm not saying like they should come out, next year and announce, after Crypto and Scooby Doo and Crypto 2, there's Scooby Doo meets Ricky and his hips, like.
Yeah.
But just something that ties in with like more.
I need this movie now.
And I even think the way they introduced Shaggy
Ricky
and Scooby
Unleashed.
was just unnecessary as well. So there was the pizza thing, that's fine. And then before Shaggy and Scooby even agree to go, I'm pretty sure Velma's talking about the Day of the Dead before that. And they're still like, yeah, I'm going to go. Whereas I think they could have made that, for all the overemphasized the characteristics, they could have made that so much simpler, because with Shaggy and Scooby, they go around in a circle for about 4 minutes before they're finally like, okay, we'll go. Whereas you could have just made it like them drooling like, oh, enchiladas, fajitas, it's Mexico, let's do it kind of thing.
I mean, I've got a bit of an unpopular opinion that I think I've formed just after watching this, and I don't know what anyone else thinks about it, but I'm just going to propose it. In these two films, and it's a shame to say, because, obviously Casey Kasem's the original Shaggy and everything, no, like, disrespect to them, because I think they do an amazing job, but I think the way they characterize Shaggy in both this film and I think Legend of the Vampire I think it's kind of annoying, because Shaggy and Scooby being scared is always endearing. They're kind of like the every person. Like if you were in this situation, you'd be freaked out as
Yeah.
well. But even before, in like the last movie, before Shaggy hears that the music festival's in a place called Vampire Rock, he's like, "Oh, I don't want to go to the Outback." And even before there's any mention of any
Yeah.
spookiness, Shaggy's like, "Oh, well, you can count me out. I don't want to go to Mexico." And it's like he's not scared of anything. It's just like he's kind of being a bit ignorant
Yeah,
and too
he's
lazy.
literally just like, I want a nap and I want to eat. Whereas you'd think it'd be more along the lines of, oh great, it's another country. It's like, different foods. Let's go. And then Velma's like, oh, okay, yeah, and look at this festival, the Day of the Dead. At which point he's like, no, 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 no. Whereas
But
as
even
it
then,
is,
she calls
she'd
it
mentioned
Mexican
it first.
Halloween, and it's like, no, stop doing this, Velma.
Yeah, my friend Angie, her dad's side is Mexican, so she has a Mexican heritage. And we watched this movie for my personal podcast sometime at the beginning of this year, I believe. Maybe. Anyway, recently, more or less. And she got so offended by that. She's like, I don't know if I can finish this movie.
No,
See, this is
it's
the thing, is
bad.
Velma's the intelligent one. If they've portrayed Daphne to be, I don't even know what in this. So if it was her, like, yeah, it's funny that, very simple and giggly, they're fine. But the one that's supposed to be intelligent.
But is that
just
potentially
falls
damaging
short.
though? Because I would almost say that, and I'm not saying kids should get all of their knowledge from Scooby Doo, but kids do pick up stuff, and it's like if I wasn't from the kind of more mixed background that I was, and I was just watching The Monster of Mexico, and bear in mind I was not the brightest kid, I'm not the brightest at all, but a lot of what Velma's saying, if it was Fred saying it or Daphne saying it, you'd take it with a grain of salt, but it's like, if what Velma's saying is this, I'm convinced that I would have believed it, and I'm not sure if I was the only one, so that's kind of irritating. But just thinking about it, Scooby-Doo has had a history of things not aging well. We were watching the first 2 seasons of Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? And there's that episode where they're in China and, Scooby and Shaggy dress up as Chinese waiters and they do, the most crass impersonations of what, they think a Chinese person sounds like. And it's yeah, that really doesn't age well. And same
Yeah.
here, if they did another movie set in India, for example, and it was Velma's oh, Diwali, we're going to go and celebrate that. It's a bit like India's bonfire night, or India's Christmas. It's yeah. Okay. Thanks, Velma.
I think now they do a lot more of a respectful kind of, this is the festival, this is what it's about, this is why we're going to have fun celebrating it, as opposed to trying to make it relatable for the audience. So I guess maybe one reason that you could maybe say that they did that is because, I'm presuming the audience would be typically kind of Northern America, kind of England, Australia. I know that they've done premiere, special kind of cards and stuff for their collections in those countries. So maybe it's I'm going to try and make it more relatable for them. But ultimately, I think now there's very much a belief that you need to have a wider understanding. It's not just what happens in your country anymore, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, there's just a lot that doesn't age well in this, and it brings me to a point where, and this is where I'm going to ask Smash for a bit of because I like to ask Smash, X amount of questions per episode, just because I'm so curious about the history of some of these movies, and we've just finished the Mook animation ones. There was Legend of the Vampire, which was in Australia, so it isn't too far removed that it's of that nature. But it's why jump from that to Mexico? Was this a rushed movie? Because it's not you can't do Mexico. Mexico's out of the question. But it just seems a bit strange to mischaracterize a place that they clearly could have done a decent job at if they did a bit more research. So I don't know. We've got Loch Ness coming up soon. I would say that would have been a safer bet than this one.
The problem with these two is they, yes, I think they were a little rushed, but the person behind it, and this is no disrespect to them, but the person that was behind these last two movies, Monster of Mexico and Legend of the Vampire, was just so set on making these two movies so classic, as in, like, again, like I was saying with the last episode, where they have the sound effects, the music, and all the original cast and everything. And so I feel like they try to focus more on nostalgia than like trying to bring the gang to modern day and realizing, hey, we need to respect and acknowledge these different races and different celebrations that people do, rituals and whatever. And because at this point, they were doing What's New Scooby Doo. And so, they were told, okay, we do these direct-to-video movies, so they're going to look like their What's New Scooby Doo counterparts. And they had like a very, very short amount of time of like, you can do these two movies, but then after these, like, we got to get them into their What's New look, their What's New outfits, their What's New Scooby-Doo voices and everything, and which that happens in the next one, in Loch Ness Monster. So I feel like these two, honestly, were just a throw something together and let's get the original voice cast up for one more time. And so I don't know how much of a story was really thought of for both of these. This one I feel like is a lot more offending, I guess you could say, than Legend of the Vampire, though I have spoken to a few Australians who have said that Legend of the Vampire is very stereotypical of Australians, and they don't love how it was portrayed. So, yeah, in terms of these, unfortunately, I have heard the person behind these last two movies talk about it and stuff, and it definitely just felt like a hurry and whip them together because this is our last and only chance to do this. And I mean, again, What's New Scooby Doo was coming out around this time. I believe it was airing at the point that this movie came out. But they were going back and forth, actually, with two different series at the same time. So there was a lot of Scooby Doo going on because they were trying to do What's New Scooby Doo, but they also debated doing this other series where it was going to be about Mystery Inc.'s kids. Rather than bringing Mystery Inc. to modern day, they were going to have Mystery Inc.'s kids now start solving mysteries in modern day. But then obviously they went with the other, having What's New Scooby Doo and whatever. So it was a very messy time here.
I mean, when you say a messy time, I think that's quite interesting because I think, and you talked about, that's two things you talked about that I can very much relate to in the watch through, and that's a messy time and nostalgia. So I feel like, and we're gonna, I guess, get into this as we go through the movie, but there were lots of things where I was like, oh yeah, they kind of pulled that from there, and they pulled that from there, and it's just things that they almost knew worked. So I guess an example of what I'm thinking there is when Daphne starts presenting the backdrop, it's like, okay, so that's Coast to Coast with Daphne Blake, Zombie Island, tick. That was a good movie. Everyone liked it. We see this here kind of thing. Again, even just small things with the Chupacabra appearing as a silhouette. I compared that to Alien Invaders. And then we see so many Wizard of Oz a couple of Wizard of Oz references as well, which, like I said, happen a bit later in the film. But it's almost like they've utilised a formula that they've seen successes with, that they know works. And I personally feel like a lot of references to things that they know have been well received.
Yeah. And it's very formulaic. It's like, almost like it's the Scooby-Doo movie at the time that I feel like a computer program would make. It's like, here's what works, can you generate this? And it's like, okay, location, Mexico.
For sure.
Characters, this. Premise, this. Like, go through the motions of it. But
yep.
One thing that I do think they've done well, and this is kind of progressing a little bit into the movie now.
The music.
So we talked about the intro and the opening scene and stuff. The song Viva Mexico. Now, I was almost disappointed in this watch through because growing up I liked that song so much that I'd almost weirdly adapted it in my head somehow, that it was a bit louder above the rest of the movie.
I still like it.
The beat was almost a little bit, I don't know, I very much kind of transformed this song in my mind and glorified it a little bit, I think, but I do think that in order for me to do that, it must be pretty good. I did like that.
Yeah. I enjoy the song a lot. Again, like with you saying about being a bit louder, I get that as well. But at the same time, I know that I would have had like both headphones in when I was watching it as a kid, and it would, like, the volume would have been jammed up and stuff. But I really do like the song, and the sequence behind it isn't too bad. Like, they're just going through what they're doing. They're having their kind of weird character moments.
But I guess we saw that in Legend of the Vampire. It's a very, like we said, it's kind of like a formulaic thing. So they did a good montage in the Australian outback on the way to Vampire Rock. It's, like I said, it's almost like that formula that we were discussing.
Yeah. Definitely with these two.
I believe this one, too, if I remember correctly, is the first Scooby movie since at least Zombie Island that they didn't do any sort of Scooby Doo Where Are You theme song.
Yeah, so they did one, I think, well, does it count as the Legend of the Vampire one? You know when they're on the boat and they recreate the original intro?
Yeah, they did it during then.
But here they don't do it at all. That's kind of...
I do think they set the tone quite nicely. As smASH said right at the start, the music from this movie, it does set the tone quite nicely. Very true to form.
Yeah.
And I also, like I said, I've said a few negatives, some positives coming up here, I guess. I really liked the family feel. I really liked it when, and I'm going to get the pronunciation of this horrendously, but is it Aleo?
Aleo, yeah.
So I really liked him. I liked the kind of dynamic with his son and just having the big family around them. The mum as well. Like I said, there's a really nice dynamic there. Then we met Charlene. And I was a bit like, oh no.
I mean, she sticks out like a sore thumb anyway. Like, you've got this nice little family that are just going through the motions, and there is nothing about Charlene that is anyway quiet. It isn't subtle. Like, I don't think at the start it's saying this is the villain, this is obviously the villain, but just the way they talk, the way they like open, like fling the saloon doors open like the OK Corral. Like,
I want to make a comparison here. It's something that JayBee will understand. smASH probably won't, but you know when you met me, JayBee, and obviously I was at university, so I'd adapted my voice away from kind of the typical accent from where I'm from.
You sounded Australian.
And then you met my oldest sister who speaks, let's say, very differently from me. I almost feel like that's the kind of level of difference that we're working with here.
No, but this
because,
is...
like, I like, for like background knowledge for everyone else, like from where I'm from has a relatively prominent accent if you kind of are within a certain area. And then because I was going to university and wanting to study law, I spent a good 3-4 years trying to adapt my voice into something very different. And that's kind of a comparison that I associate with the second Charlene walks through the door.
It's just... I don't know how to describe it. They're so annoying, but they're kind of not too memorable.
It's
but
very
they're
colloquial.
So there.
Is that the nice way of saying
Well,
it?
I don't. It's not like the fact of colloquial. Maybe it is the fact that we're kind of in this new setting and they're so out of that setting. But I don't know. It's just at the start they're just taking all the time to. I don't know. They're just.
I literally saw them and was like, do you know what? I hope it's you. I really do hope it's you, because I just want to see you taken away at the end of this. I just got really bad vibes from them right from the start. I mean, it's strange because obviously they were trying to do that very like nice thing, like, oh, here's your drinks, this is how you do this as a tradition, and all that kind of thing. And it's like, I don't know what it is, but I just don't like it.
But I guess we do get our first hint at this point. Now,
where she's the coffee beans thing.
Not really the coffee beans, because I don't think it's like they come up a lot, but obviously it is the kind of final, the incriminating evidence. Now, this could be, boiled down to the movie again not being the most sensitive in regards to like different cultures and stuff, but I'm kind of taking it as the first hint. When Charlene says, oh, this is loco, and loco is, means crazy in Mexican. And then she says, I mean Spanish. And when the mystery machine's vandalized, it's quite clear that the person that did it knew nothing about Spanish. So I guess this is our first hint, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
I mean, what did you think when you met Charlene Smash?
Yeah, she definitely she was trying to be Scooby's Dolly Parton, if either of you know who she is.
Yeah.
Is that Hannah Montana's auntie?
She's in the Hannah Montana series.
Yeah.
And she's, I don't know, she definitely is like that sore thumb type of thing, like you guys were saying. But I also get so annoyed that this is way later in the movie, but this other character, they don't even try to hide who she is.
Yeah.
And it bugs me.
Oh, it just gets so annoying because, like you said, they change her into this other character, and then her whatever he is, boyfriend, partner, whatever, doesn't know it's her. JayBee could put a wig on and a different outfit, and I'd know it was JayBee. How on earth does he not know that it's a wig? I find it completely...
Apparently they shouldn't be together.
I guess just by the law of at least these Scooby movies, we are just fresh off the two skinny dudes having a similar reveal, so I guess it's plausible in this universe, but like, when it's literally someone... And you know what? No, look. For all like I'm criticising Charlene now, I don't know who is she with? Is it Louis that she's with?
I don't know.
Like, he's just as bad and just as annoying when they're like together, because literally later on when Velma's trying to pass El Chupacabra off as Mexico's Bigfoot, when they're like in that kind of little area when it starts thundering, they're both there together, like leaning into the camera like, lock your doors and don't go outside. Like, that is just the hokiest thing.
Just like you were saying, everything about them two collectively is annoying as well. Like, even when she gives him that big, like, the medallion, and he doesn't notice that it has a huge red button on the back of it.
And you'd press that by mistake, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So silly. But to be fair to Charlene, and like Smash was saying, it's kind of like the Scooby's answer to Dolly Parton. That would have a place somewhere. So, for example, in Alien Invaders, there's quite a prominent like waitress there. Yeah. I guess in The Witch's Ghost, there's a really prominent restaurant scene there where she could have almost been carrying out the food, because there is that interaction with the restaurant owner at the start when he's been like quite positive before they literally eat the entire restaurant. Like, she could have fit into either of those scenes quite nicely if they wanted that kind of reference. But like I said, I feel like this movie just goes for things that they know people like, and it doesn't have to make sense to them. They just kind of were like, okay, people like this, let's add this in, kind of thing. And like I said, I think she could have fit into a different movie.
Yeah, I definitely
don't think it was this one.
Yeah. Well, I feel like this movie definitely like had absolutely no adults in mind when making it. Like, it's purely for kids, so it doesn't have to make sense, and so it's okay if we butcher all this stuff because just the kids are gonna watch it, type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. Obviously, with it being Scooby Doo, like, it's not going to be like a Scooby Natural, or we're not going to expect it to explore the darkest themes from like a Stephen King book, or it's not going to explore the latest, politics matters. But like, I would say a film maybe a bit like Scoob is more centric toward kids than Zombie Island, but I feel like anyone can enjoy those things, whereas this, it's like, if you do know too much, it's actively offensive. So
yeah,
I mean, I very much see what you're both saying.
Like, it's not just for kids, it's like anti-adult.
Yeah, especially there's one bit that bugged me again. The Mystery Machine doors, they open the wrong way.
Oh no, that's ridiculous. Well,
It bugged me.
It does bug me too, though.
I don't know why it bugs me. I'm pretty sure it changes partway through the movie.
Yeah.
But for
I wouldn't be
about
surprised.
2 scenes, they open from the front instead of the back. And I just don't know why, and I don't know why it bothered me so much, but it bothered me.
To be fair, IRL that annoys me. Like, you know those fancy sports cars that like wing up? I know you like them, but they just annoy me. I don't understand them. I'd get hit in the face if I tried to do that. But I guess moving on to some more positive things, because I think I'm finding it way too difficult. I'm finding it way too easy to be negative about this. Because I actually look, I'll put on record that I do have a soft spot for this movie. It does mean a lot to me, sadly enough. But we criticised Daphne for just being some Ricky obsessed hip lady, but their skill with the footprint was actually pretty good. I feel like that's kind of like something that, say, would happen in Scooby Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, you know, with the kind of thumbprint. It's that very fine line between, she's very like feminine and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's also to her advantage at times. So I do really like this footprint aspect, albeit it's very far-fetched. But I do like that.
Yeah, like you say, it's nice to see that she's got some kind of resourcefulness with that girly exterior, but again, just looking at like the realistic points of things, like how they suddenly have a completely empty suitcase for her to be carrying that around in, is something that's just like. But like I say, so before we started our watch through of this, my phone broke. So I wasn't in the best of moods. So I guess if there was something that I could pick up on, I was picking up on it.
Why were you just
maybe that's why I didn't like the Mystery Machine doors so much. I just needed somewhere to get rid of the anger.
Those doors. I can't believe that.
Those stinking doors.
And to be fair, the phone was my fault. So
it wasn't your fault.
Maybe you should take it out on me.
Anyway, so some of the characters that we meet that are certainly interesting to say the least, if not maybe a bit irrelevant.
Muy interesante.
The weird I've literally just put the weird the weird prophecy man with the website.
Oh, see, that's something that annoys me. They see them and Daphne's like, "Oh my gosh, you can speak English?" When literally everyone they've met spoke English. Like, why is that? But when do they meet them?
That was something else that I kind of was interested in, and then I was like, you need to remember this is a kids' movie, in theory. And that was that there wasn't subtitles. For some reason, when they started speaking in Spanish, I was like, where's the subtitles?
Wait, who was speaking in Spanish?
I think Aleo was at the beginning. Certainly some of his family were. And initially I was like, how do I know what they're saying? Like,
I don't really
and also
that.
Fred was trying to.
But I think the point is
for a little while
that...
I was like, why aren't they writing this down? Then I was like, okay, you need to remember that this movie was not aimed for people your age, okay? Like, calm down.
But it can be
this
excused.
was maybe aimed at people that couldn't read that well.
It
so
can be excused for
down.
not showing Fred's subtitles though, because I think the comedy of that is that it wasn't
explaining
wrong.
that.
So then the laughter would be when Alejo was like, "Oh, you just thanked my family for their amazing hospital and Build-A-Bears," and when that medicine goes, "Thank you for your wise words of ostrich," teenagers. So. That's kind of fun. But I actually don't remember anyone speaking outright Spanish.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You want to know something interesting about this guy?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
I like this. This is when, like, some of the best moments of these podcasts, though, is when you're like, do you want to know an interesting fact? And JayBee and I just, like, sit up and move towards the mic, like, yeah.
This gets me out of bed in the morning.
So, yeah, that's his website, the ancientmexicanwisdom.com. That is a real website that's owned by Warner Brothers.
Really? What's on it?
You look it up now and it basically tells you there's nothing. But it takes you to Warner Brothers still.
I mean, respect for the commitment. I wasn't expecting that. Imagine. That would have actually been a great little Easter egg, you know. ancientmexicanwisdom.com. I actually like that. I like that a lot. So where are we now?
So
I've written down respect for Fred for trying to learn the language. So we've just gone past. So we've just left this Mexican wisdom tent.
Yeah, I
guy.
think they've started to split up and kind of look for clues. And a moment in there that I admittedly did like is, and I made JB rewind it the first time that we heard that, the first Wizard of Oz reference, the coyotes and jaguars and boars, oh my thing. It just made me sit up and smile. It kind of re-engaged my attention with it.
I mean, this is the funny part. Is that there's that reference to the Wizard of Oz at the start, and then obviously, you know, when Mr. Smiley says paid no attention to the person behind the curtain, you know, that's what Oz said. But then also, the last thing that Alejo's mum, I think, calls Charlene is a witch. So it's literally like all those references is just building up to an insult to Charlene. And normally I wouldn't condone that, but in this instance, I think I'll make an exception.
And even as this kind of search persists, like, a lot of moments that are coming up that I quite enjoyed are linked to other movies. So, seeing outside the cinema, it says now playing Legend of the Vampire.
Ooh.
There's the Hex Girls poster.
Yes.
Lots of things that I like in this movie, I don't associate with this movie, if that makes sense. Like, some of my favourite bits of this movie are, like, the Easter eggs. So, like, the kind of points towards the Hex Girls, Legend of the Vampire. I really like the Wizard of Oz references. There's all the things that I really like. I almost like them because I'm feeling a nostalgia towards something else.
But what's the deal with that Legend of the Vampire thing? Because it says now playing Legend of the Vampire, so it's like, is this just another film? Because the Cyber Chase heavily alluded to the fact that the gang were very aware that they were making a movie. So is that the case for all of them now? And they had like posters for the rock band in Australia, in Mexico.
Or could it be like a televised viewing of the Legend of the Vampire kind of rock concert thing?
But wasn't it just called Vampire Rock? Although, I guess
it could be
like a documentary.
So
Yahoo
I believe,
Exposed.
and smASH can correct me on this, that when we asked him about the timeline, you're to assume the first 4 movies we looked at were an independent timeline because we have obviously travelled backwards in age now, but they were already familiar with the Hex Girls and that kind of thing.
And this is the What's New
So
timeline?
this could almost be a year after, and it could have been called something else.
I mean, that's
My thought with this is, they've done it other times, but like, there was like a Hannah Montana concert, a Jonas Brothers concert movie that you could see in theaters, and it was like in 3D. So I'm kind of thinking it's something kind of like that, where it's like a Legend of the Vampire rock concert, the movie, like live the concert through this movie.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's very much how I think I was imagining that as well.
Imagine that though, you pay for tickets to like see people perform, and then like I reckon they would have been
They
refunded,
market
right?
it quite sneakily as well, you know. So
The
I went to I don't know if this is a good thing to admit because a lot of people love them, a lot of other people hate them. I went to a One Direction concert with my cousin, and as part of the marketing at the start, they were like, rewatch this again, we are making this into a DVD, and they almost marketed it as if it was that one specific night, when actually it was a random night from the tour. But to engage people to go and get the DVD, they made it sound like it was going to be that concert specifically.
You've got,
so
like,
the
Legend of the
marketing with
Vampire.
that is actually quite interesting, but like that's an entire sideline that's completely irrelevant, I guess.
Like Legends of the Vampire with just a compilation of old Matt Marvelous things, and then there's like the Yahoo extended edition. I like that. That's pretty good. Oh.
So after the cinema thing and seeing the posters outside, progresses and we reach an interesting development. So they kind of go on a little road trip. The signs are kind of tampered with, all that kind of thing. And they end up, as we said before, meeting somebody who looks remarkably like Charlene, but their partner doesn't seem to recognise it, who is running some kind of strange historical presentation. Now, for me, this is when the movie gets
I mean,
to an entirely new level of strange.
does Charlene work there, or has she just broken in to impersonate them? Like,
I think she's just broken in. I don't know though, because she knows
Oh.
the secret passage at the bottom. So
what if
it's strange.
What if she's also with the owner of the museum in that separate
And
disguise?
I might not know too much here, but how big is Mexico?
Isn't it connected to America?
Well,
I'm not even going to talk about geography
because
because I already sound stupid enough. As
I
it
was
is.
a bit confused when they started driving along and it had just started to get dark, and then Fred's like, "Oh yeah, we'll be here by morning," and it's like, does it take that long? Would it take that long,
I remember
really?
him once, and I just got.
I'm pulling up a
scammed.
map.
Because when I went on holiday as a child, my parents hate flying, so we used to drive, from the north of England to the south of England, then get on a ferry and go into France, and then drive all the way to the bottom of France. And we could do that in, I want to say 15 hours.
Then
And
again,
that's
though,
going all the way across 2 countries.
the America way of things is long, right? Like, you'd have to fly. Like, there's many different
Yeah,
time
maybe
zones in that
between
area.
states and stuff, but not.
I mean, yeah, okay, it's
within the
Mexico
country.
itself. Like, I've only ever been to, I think, Cairo once on a cruise.
But yeah, I guess that was just something that I picked up on that confused me a lot. But again, this could have just been phone anger taking
Yeah,
over
have you
at this
been to
point.
Mexico?
No, no, my parents don't like flying.
We could go there. We could, all three
Well,
of
my
us
dad
could go
doesn't.
there one day.
Not my dad, my mum, sorry.
We could vlog there. We could
Why do you want to vlog everywhere? You still want to go to that Nintendo place in Japan to vlog?
We're vlogging in Spooky Island by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
And also, I know the location.
You do know that Gala's not on Spooky Island, don't you?
No, look, I know the location where they filmed Patrick's Museum. That
Do
I'm
you?
going there.
I'm very proud of you.
With the full knowledge that
yes.
Sarah Michelle Gellar is
I
nowhere
want-
to be seen. But
Did,
I want to go there.
we're doing that.
did you find the kind of time for Mexico, the map?
So yeah, I pulled up a map, and you'd think I'd know this, but you were correct. It is connected to the U.S., but I mean, I don't exactly know how big it is, but overall, it looks like the size of Mexico looks like just like one of our average state sizes, and I'm at the bottom of the state of Utah, and I can drive to the top of the state of Utah in 4 to 5 hours, and so I think you could drive the whole Mexican length in one day.
I just found it strange that it was like, oh yeah, it's almost like it was going to take all night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, what they arrived to at that historical presentation, I think for me this is almost the next turning point of the movie, because I think at this point I'd started to really quite enjoy the kind of almost the chase scene. Like I said, I like the Wizard of Oz reference. But then I think for me personally, it takes it a little bit of a downward turn again, in that, we go back, like JayBee said, we saw a little bit of progression with Daphne. She was using that kind of beauty knowledge to her advantage, and then she becomes the person in distress again. And then just all the scene through the trapdoor, I found extremely strange, because they were angling so quickly when in reality you'd just go flying off the edge. Then they all balance 7 people high, kind of
I mean,
thing.
there's a lot of music in this movie, and in this one in particular, it just feels that they needed to meet a quota, and so they just threw one in. Let's just make a PowerPoint that looks nice and just
Yeah.
flop it on there.
So can I back up a little bit?
Of course.
I just have 2 random notes that I kind of wanted to let out. First of all, because the mystery machine gets tampered with, we see, and Shaggy can't control it. Apparently it's the brake fluid or whatever. And first of all, that liquid has always looked disgusting to me, and I'm like, Fred, have you changed the oil? I think you need to look at the mystery machine, my dude. Anyway, my other note is Luis, the one that has Charlene and whatever. He's always bugged me, but he was rude. I don't know. I always felt like he was rude, because Daphne was like, "Here's some ice," and he was just like, "Okay, thanks." And I was like, okay. Anyway, random.
Yeah, I don't really like his character too much at all.
Especially when he's just there, like, just screaming about stuff. Like, it's just kind of mad. Am I right in saying that Fred and Daphne and Velma see the El Chupacabra before everyone else falls?
Yeah, that's the point that you actually made when we were watching this, is for the first time it's not like Shaggy and Scooby see it, because quite often, like with the Witches Go, Shaggy and Scooby see it and then everyone's like, no you didn't, like, you've been stupid.
Yep.
Whereas this time it's kind of like, okay, you have to go through this first now. You always bully them, it's your turn.
Right.
But yeah, I guess that was quite an interesting new dynamic, because I guess like I've been picking up on things that I think are quite similar to something else, but that's quite nice, quite new.
So let's see my notes. Okay, I think now we're getting onto the stage where the gang have made their way onto the pyramid and they get caged, essentially.
Yeah, I found that, like I said, for me, as soon as Daphne got kidnapped, it was a bit of a downward spiral, and I don't just mean falling through the trapdoor, everything just kind of spiraled a bit for me personally. So the first
heck
thing...
does that work, though?
Yeah, there wasn't enough time, really, was there, to get on top of the pyramid, and...
I'm not disputing that. What I'm disputing is that this is exact cage that raises up around
it was
them.
because they'd placed that sand statue, and they thought that it'd draw their attention. But
okay, I mean,
like, why did they go up there in the first place? Like, Fred was like, Daphne, we're coming. But like, if you were Daphne, wouldn't you have started to meet them halfway or something?
I would have rolled.
And then, that's something else that I found a little bit annoying, is the art style of them running down the side of the pyramid.
Oh no, that was alright. I mean,
because it wasn't, for Scooby, it wasn't even running, he was jumping. Mm-hmm. I don't think Velma's feet touched the floor once, and then Scooby runs over the edge, lingers in the air till the other 7 people have run past, so Velma then grabs his tail and pulls him back on. Just some of the art style there.
Typical, like Looney Tuning that part. It kind of takes the stakes away, but at the same time, I don't think anyone was watching this thinking, oh my gosh, when the El Chupacabra gets a hold of them, they're done for. This is like the end. So, what are we on? So my gosh!
After that,
I'm actively gonna try and avoid talking about that stupid parrot thing.
Yeah, that was a bit strange. And also, what I find strange, and I know they're trying to explain this at the end, but I'm like, that's just not realistic. Is when all, and I literally mean all, of those kind of, would you say Egyptian style things come to life?
I think we've kind of
almost like the.
I think we may have gone a bit too far forward. Although I guess it's all in one scene. So
it's like another kind of.
So what are these things? Are they all Mr. Smiley animatronics?
Apparently, but I just feel like, I know they say that they're like big person in this kind of sector, but I just don't feel like even then this would be a public like visitation spot. Like, this is where anyone can go and visit. He's not gonna have had chance to set up like 20 feet like 20 feet tall sphinxes or whatever.
Imagine that though. You just
and
go on a day out and you see
lion things. It's like, okay, well, I get that you've got a way of explaining this, but I just think it's too far.
But they're just doing all this for money, right? I would say these types of animatronics in real life that's like $1 billion investment.
Yeah,
sell one of them.
But like, surely they've invested so much money into doing that. And she's like, oh yeah, I've married him, but like, as soon as when his mum dies, she's gonna take the money in the divorce. You don't know how long you've got to wait. Surely they're investing far too much money for something that's not... Like, they weren't even married, were they?
Who? Louise and Charlene?
Yeah.
I think it's his fiancée, right?
Yeah, I think they were engaged.
Wait, so was Smiley okay with
Apparently
business?
for the money, yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah, I really should not have aged. That's right. Okay, can someone please
This
change the
movie's
topic, or I'm gonna.
Some of these movies are very different when you've not seen them since you were young. Like I said, the last time I saw this, I was maybe 8 at the oldest. And then
So
things
I
progress.
yeah, for sure. Things do, like, you perceive things differently once you're older or realize a lot of different things. But I have to agree with you that, like, once Daphne gets kidnapped and whatever, it's like I could handle this movie up until this point, and then I'm just like, I'm done. Like, I can't continue this because this whole next being kidnapped and being run off, for breaking a statue, and suddenly everything is coming to life, and this weird parrot animatronic that we don't speak of, and this whole section is so confusing, so irrelevant, and it just, to me, again, feels like another witch's ghost chasing each other around just to fill time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I couldn't agree with you more about the Witch's Ghost reference in the, you know, so they're about to come back to the cemetery, and then you get one unmasking, and it's like, why does this warrant an unmasking? The skeleton costume was never a thing. We didn't even know what that was. It was
Yeah.
kind of like they just wanted to get that second Wizard of Oz reference in. Like, oh, don't look behind the curtain. Ignore the man behind the curtain. But then they were like, okay, we can't make that the main reveal, surely. So they decide to add something else in. I'm just not a fan of, like I said, that skeleton thing. I just find it very strange. Not only that, I find it very kind of strange that they'd only leave, like, Charlene's coffee. Like, do you want to point out that it's them any more than you already have?
But not just that, but I feel like a lot of these final scenes, I actually would say that just by themselves, I love. Like, with the statue scene that we've just spoken about, I absolutely adore that scene, just from wackiness to the music, just not as part of the movie. Like, I could YouTube that now, and I reckon I could jam to that. Like, I like it a lot. But in this, it's just so out of place, and
I agree that, like, in itself, it's a lot of fun. It's Scooby Doo, it's wacky, it's a cartoon, they're just running around, But in the context of the movie, I'm like, either you could have done a lot better and made it actually be relevant to what's going to happen next, or they tried to with the whole, they were all animatronics and whatever. Or, like, just maybe not do it in this movie.
But it leads on to, like, I'm sorry, do you want to?
No, I was just going to say quite quickly that it's almost like they didn't utilize Mexico. Now, I'm probably going to get pulled up on, like, my understanding of the world here. But why do they have, like, the pyramids and things there? And there seem to be, like, lots of, like, Egyptian references, when I personally associate Mexico as having a very strong culture and stuff that's not that.
I think they have
Yeah.
They could have,
temples, like, built
like
up
JayBee
temples.
said, that was good, and you agreed here, that was good. You could have maybe used that in a different movie. Like, there's one where Velma goes to Egypt and then they all go out to visit her, right?
Yeah, that's coming up shortly.
Yeah. So that section and those kind of villains and things would have maybe fit in that great. But when you've
Yeah.
set a movie with Mexico in the title, make the most of what that country has on offer. Don't just pass it off as we're going to do Mexican Halloween, here's some Egyptian artifacts. Like, they could have done something with the location.
Yeah, or even, I think this is borrowing a bit from an episode of Mystery Incorporated, but literally the actual El Chupacabra, it is, and this is, like, I've criticised this movie for oversimplifying it, but I'm kind of gonna maybe offer a way that they could have done that a bit better. Like, again, this is not an accurate representation, but El Chupacabra is pretty much like a freaky looking dog, and so they could have been
think it's a
tormenting Mexico, and when Scooby shows up, they could have gone, oh, this is the one that did it, this is the only dog that's arrived here for a while, and then it's a bit more tension. Then Scooby's on the kind of Scooby's getting criticised, and it's all about saving Scooby. And I feel like that would have been a bit better than just having this like Homer Simpson thing roaming around.
Yeah.
I also like, not that this is the best name, but I feel like it would ease a lot more people. It would flow with a lot more people. Instead of calling it the Chupacabra, I honestly wish they would have just called it the Monster of Mexico.
Yeah.
If you're gonna keep the design, just call it the Monster of Mexico.
That would have been good.
That would have been
the
good.
Monster of Mexico.
That would have worked. And okay, so on the design of the Monster of Mexico, I have so many questions about the disguises, because at the end, Charlene in that costume was picking up stages, spinning them round and throwing them. Superhuman strength. Are the disguises that complex that there's some kind of metal formation that gives them this strength?
I'd imagine with it being
I feel like
Smileys, there'd
it
be some
goes
animatronic
far too
stuff.
far.
I mean, you see things nowadays of technology, almost like modern day Iron Man suits, helping people lift a lot more than a human should. So I guess if it's this Smiley technology that could create full-on like dragons, it may be able to do stuff. And I don't know.
Honestly, that does it for my notes. I guess it's over to you, JayBee, and
I've
Smash
got
at
one
this
more
point.
thing, and it's like Fred annoyed me a bit just after the statue scene. I think it's what's the name of the guy, the main guy? You got it written.
Alejo.
Alejo's like, oh, there's Senor Fuente. What's he doing here? And Fred literally just turns and says, oh, he's trying to attack you. And I just feel like Fred wouldn't have said something so blatantly factual without having any substantial claim.
Yeah,
Like,
it is like they've lost a good percentage of brains in this. Like you were saying right at the start, Velma, people would take what she said as fact and then refers to this as Mexican Halloween.
yeah.
And then, like you're saying there, Fred making quite an obvious mistake. It's like, what kind of happened here?
Yeah,
Something was certainly different.
Now, I've got a few notes about this final altercation, but I don't want to kind of like over talk. So I want to ask Smash, what's your opinion on, I guess, from the Mr. Smiley reveal to the end?
So, okay, I kind of think the Mr. Smiley, well, just having Mr. Smiley be in on it was actually kind of clever, because we see a Mr. Smiley billboard during the first little romp when they're traveling to Mexico. And so I thought that was kind of a clever way of being like, hey, foreshadowing type thing. Because there are some Scooby Doo episodes and stuff where it's like, and this is the person, and everyone's like, who? We've never met this person in the entire episode. So how are we supposed to expect them? So at least we never really talked about Mr. Smiley, but at least they introduced it in a visual way that we could recognize him if we paid attention.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that I don't love the whole like, oh, he's a skeleton. Oh, but here's the monster now. Like, I guess I kind of would have liked it if Mr. Smiley was the monster as well, and we took out Charlene, ignore Charlene.
Yeah.
But then, I don't know. I felt like this ending scene, not that it really had to be long, but I felt like it got kind of cut short because of the crazy musical number we just had with all the animatronics and whatever. And so I felt like it could have been a little longer, and kind of we could have seen the gang a little more, be like, hey, so here's what we found, can you help us, like, does this mean anything to you guys, blah blah blah. But I kind of felt like the El Chupacabra was caught way too easily at the end. And I also feel like we don't see enough of the El Chupacabra in this movie. And again, I'm blaming that one scene with all the animatronics. I should be nicer to it, but yeah. But then I really like the whole, them kind of having their party at the end. I thought that was cute and fun. to end it.
Yeah, that was certainly fun. I think, like you say, we don't actually see the monster of Mexico that much. They do bring in almost other villains that kind of make it a distraction. And in terms of the skeleton outfit, I just think it could have been something different. So we're presuming that similar to the Lunar Ghost kind of, not the Lunar Ghost, the evil mask figure kind of thing, that more than one person utilises the costume, and that's how Charlene goes missing. In that, you know, is it Mr. Smiley, I want to say?
Yeah.
Mr. Smiley puts the outfit on and that kind of thing. So if they'd had an outfit that we recognised,
I guess they can mix them.
it might have been a more satisfying ending. But for them just to be like looking like they're from a different cartoon show, like I've forgotten what it's called, but I used to watch some cartoon that had like skeletons walking around, and it just literally looks like they'd been dropped in from that. There was no reference really to skeletons in any other part of that movie, so it just seemed out of place.
But it's quite dark as well, that sequence, when you like see what he's doing. He's like pretty much impersonating Aleo's dead dad.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's kind of
I felt
evil,
offended.
right? Like it gets to a point where he's not just money hungry. Like that's malicious, and he's not even done his research to like fit into that. Like it's just crazy. No, but Mr. Smiley is kind of, I actually, you know what, I agree with Smash. I like the Mr. Smiley reveal enough, because I think I read somewhere that a criticism was that it was only the billboard scene where Mr. Smiley was teased, but it's actually where Luis met Charlene. You know, he says, I met her at Smiley's amusement parks and I've been smiling ever since. And also, Fred talks about the wretched parrot, like, oh my gosh, this is awful. It looks like something from a tacky amusement park.
Yep.
So it is quite good, and I do like that. Another thing that I kind of have a problem with, though, is we've mentioned, Scooby Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, and obviously I think we can agree that if budget was not an object, if there was no budget, the movie was free, the evil mask figure could have easily won if they just got every single costume out and just utilized all of them. And
for sure
is like Smiley could have won if all of those animatronics were utilized. And it's not like we didn't use this because of budget. It's like they're there. You've animated this wacky scene with them all in. Like,
not even that, but it wasn't just those animatronics. They physically had an army of 15 men that helped them kidnap Daphne.
Oh yeah, what happened to the bird people?
True.
What were
my heck, true.
Who the heck were they? Were they animatronics? No, because they look like
they just disappeared so quickly.
Maybe those were the locals. Actually, no, the locals were... You know what? You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Didn't even think of that.
That's actually mad. They had so many people.
I think it's just they spread everything out too much in the movie that, like you say, if it had all been brought together, they would have had so much more of a chance, and it could have been a lot more interesting than having all these different things spread out over a duration.
But is okay, I agree. And again, we've spoken a lot about Charlene, and I think their reveal raises more questions than answers. Obviously, there's certain questions that aren't really appropriate to get into, but are we of the opinion that Charlene is genuinely with Mr. Smiley out of love, or that this is just another like Louise situation? And obviously, appearance has nothing to do with that, but it's like they've animated Mr. Smiley like old school James Corden, and it's like, and he's clearly got a lot of money.
Yeah, to be able to go through all those animatronics and things, it's not that they need the money.
So is Smiley just another victim to like Charlene, or are they both just in on it together?
I kind of feel like at some point Mr. Smiley decided to become like a criminal, and Charlene was already, had her face in the criminal well-known type thing, and so they kind of like came together for this idea, and then obviously kind of grew feelings for each other through this, and then she used Luis for the money as, you know, like part of the whole plan and plot and whatever. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's kind of it kind of raises a lot of questions because Charlene could very well be somewhat of a genius. Like so many different disguises. Like I don't know. I reckon she could be pretty powerful. But yeah, the ending scene happens, and that's all quite fun. Now, was it always so? Like you said, Smash. It was always the plan to have this be the last, I guess, time that the original cast, or at least as much as the original cast as they could get, would all be together. Do you know if they had any opinions about this being the last one? Like, if anyone ever said after the fact, it's a shame that it had to end with this one, or was it just that was a job done?
I'm honestly not sure because, like I said in the last one, Nicole Jaffe, however you say her last name, who plays Velma, had basically retired from acting already, and so like all of her revenue that she made off of these movies went to her employees and whatever. And so I haven't heard anything from like anyone, you know, no interviews or anything that I've really heard. Uh, just from like I don't know if it was the director necessarily, but the person who basically wanted these movies to be a thing. I've just heard his thoughts on it, and kind of he has spoken out about like that he knows and acknowledges that a lot of people don't like how everything was portrayed in this movie, but he says he just kind of brushes it off and he likes how it was done. So, but I'm not entirely sure on the voice actors themselves.
No, I mean it's interesting. It definitely is. So, does anyone have any last kind of notes or any thoughts about the Monster of Mexico?
Yes.
Ooh.
So, Heather North and Nicole, who, you know, I just kind of brought up, this is both of their last. Well, it's at least Heather North. I don't know about Nicole particularly, but this was Heather North's last role before she died, and Nicole, obviously, this is her last time she ever played Velma. Heather died in 2017, but yeah, just a little side note. This is Heather's last movie she ever did, and then Nicole's last time ever doing Velma.
I mean that is interesting, and again,
it's certainly going to lead to a few changes of
Yeah.
opinions next week, perhaps.
I didn't want to mention it in this one because I feel like I was a bit too like heavy on my opinions of it last episode, but I think Heather North is a great Daphne in the day, and I don't know what it was. Maybe I don't know. I just think I didn't really like the tone in this movie particularly, but that's just my opinion. It does, like you say, though, really lead to some interesting things, especially what's the next one? Is it the Loch Ness Monster?
Yes.
Indeed. So that's certainly one of my nostalgia ones, I think it's fair to say. Perhaps the last nostalgia one for me, and then I'm in like kind of fresh territory.
Yeah, maybe. What's after Loch Ness? Like just jumping forward.
Aloha.
Oh no, Aloha was
Aloha.
another. Did you know?
And then Where's My Mummy?
Yeah.
This certainly, like this one, all ones that I've just seen once or twice. Loch Ness, on the other hand, was, yeah, I think it's great. But before we start moving on to any of that, we need to wrap up this one, and we need to know whether you would say smash or pass for this one. So, JayBee, as always, we're starting with you. Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico, smash, pass, and why?
This is the first time that I'm actually upset. I kind of feel like I want to stop recording and I want to have a private few words with everyone in this call and just like, can we redo that last bit? Because I am kind of angry that I have to do this first, but I do have an answer.
It's always you first, JayBee.
I think that this is probably one of the most problematic Scooby movies that we've covered and probably ever will cover. And you know what? It's probably one of the most problematic ones that they're ever going to make. It's obviously one of my most nostalgic ones, and for all I just slated the characters, I've slated it for the last, hour and 20 minutes. I do enjoy it, and you know what? I'm probably gonna watch this another 100 times before it's eventually time for me to bow out from this plane of existence. But I'm gonna pass this one on good conscience, because for all I'm probably gonna watch this 100 more times, if I'm introducing someone to these movies, if I'm recommending these movies to people, this is way, way, way at the bottom of the list. In fact, I wouldn't encourage people, if they want to do a watch or of all of them, to leave this one out. But it's, if someone came up to me and said, I can only watch 10 Scooby Doo movies, which one do you recommend? And this won't even be in that top 10. So I think I'm gonna have to pass this one, although my heart's a bit hurt. So, Milly, will you smash or pass The Monster of Mexico?
I think I'm going to agree with a lot of what you were saying. I think of all the ones we've watched, this isn't my least favourite. I think it's got some very good moments, but I think a lot of the moments that I don't like them because they're in this movie. I like them because I associate them with something else. So I love the Wizard of Oz movies, but the Wizard of Oz references, but that's because I've got some great Wizard of Oz memories from growing up, so it's kind of not associated with the movie. And just like other kind of things that I enjoyed, like seeing the Legend of the Vampire poster, the Hex Girls poster, all that kind of thing. A lot of my favourite moments, I don't feel that they were my favourite because of this movie. I feel like they existed in their own right. And I do have a lot that I didn't like right from the start with the kind of email video conference thing. I just found it a bit strange. So I think this is going to be the first one where I say pass to.
Oh, interesting.
So, like I said, it's not the worst one that we've seen, I don't think.
What, so far, or?
Yeah, so far. I'd rate it above some of the ones that we've seen in terms of my enjoyment. And
what, as in the ones that we've covered on the show?
Yeah.
Oh my
I've
gosh,
enjoyed
okay.
it more than some of those, and I'll rewatch it more than some of those. But like critically analysing it and what I enjoy and didn't enjoy and what I think worked well, the bits that I do think worked well exist beyond this movie. Like, there are bigger references that these were kind of paying homage to. So I'm going to ultimately say pass for the movie, but that doesn't mean that I didn't enjoy it as much. So that ultimately just leaves you, Smash. Would you say smash or pass for Scooby Doo and the Monster of Mexico?
All right, so this one has some nostalgia for me. It's definitely one of like the first VHS Scooby movies I've owned. I remember, I still have my VHS copy, and it wasn't like until just a few years ago that I finally got the DVD version, whatever. But I've never really enjoyed this one, even growing up. Again, I have nostalgic feelings for it just from watching it as a kid, and that's really the only thing that holds it up for me. But otherwise, I'd never choose to watch this one unless someone else wants to, or it's just on somewhere. It's never my go-to or whatever. So I'm gonna pass this one as well, and I'd honestly say, because my last one that I passed was The Witch's Ghost, I'd honestly say I'd watch The Witch's Ghost over this one.
Okay, that's really interesting. And it's the first time we've all agreed that one of these is a pass. So I guess that's interesting too.
I'm gonna open this up to a bit of a question to Smash, because Smash knows, I think, a lot of these movies, if not all of them, and obviously there's a massive chunk of these films that I haven't seen yet. Based on the movies coming up, do you think that there'll be another episode where all three of us pass again? You don't need to name names necessarily, but do you reckon?
Yeah. So I feel like, okay, I was actually just talking to Mariah about this before we started recording, because I was like, okay, this is like a really low point of Scooby for me. But then I feel like coming up, it's all of a sudden gonna like shoot up, and like we're all, at least maybe, I can't say for you guys, but we're gonna like the movies coming up. But then there's a period coming up. It's kind of a transition period for Scooby, honestly, where these few movies are very, very hit or miss. Some people love them, some people hate them. There's people that are just like about them, and I feel like there's gonna be at least one in those little few that I think will all be like we can pass. But then after that little dull moment, I feel like the movies kind of almost get back to like Zombie Island-esque level before they kind of go middle ground for a bit, if any of that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that, and I'm looking forward to it. I really am. Now, before we kind of wrap up with the intro, has there been anything in just the community at large that anyone wants to talk about? Because I know last week we had the Funko Pop announcement. I don't know if anything cool's going on at the moment.
We actually had something weird happen, just because, again, I am head first in the Scooby community, So we had, I think it was last week, the Scooby Doo and Crypto 2 movie got leaked. The resume with it got leaked. And then for a while now, for like a year or two, there's been a rumor of a Scooby Doo and Courage the Cowardly Dog crossover movie. And today, actually, some international sites have suddenly started to list that movie up for pre-order with the release date of September 13th, and with the title being Scooby Doo Straight Out of Nowhere. Ooh. So that's interesting.
I like that, and I guess we can assume that eventually we're gonna cover that one. So yeah, I guess thank you so much for joining us once again, Smash. I'm actually really, really enjoying these, even though this was kind of a bit of an awkward movie to talk about. I'd say that kind of made the recording of it a bit more fun. Like, I think this has been my favorite recording session so far, so I'm kind of hyped.
Me too. So guys, if you want to check out next week's episode and have your little watch along beforehand so you can join in the premiere, as we kind of alluded to, next week's movie is Scooby Doo and the Loch Ness Monster?
Yes.
Yeah. Ooh. So, like I said, one of my favourites, so I'm looking forward to doing the rewatch of this. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please remember to check out Smash's channel as well. All their links will be in the description, won't they, JayBee?
Yeah, in the description below. It's good.
Indeed. So, guys, this has been another episode of Smash or Pass. So please make sure to like, comment and subscribe to JayBee, Milly and Smash.